Hey man, how you doing? Can't complain. Ready for another show? Getting there.
Five places.
Thank you, Five. Now I feel rushed.
You will be fine. You know what I was thinking about earlier? I mean, we live in a democracy, right?
That is correct.
Why is it that we aren't directly involved with the decision-making process of our country? I mean, isn't democracy supposed to be a government by the people and for the people? Shouldn't that mean that we're involved with the government regardless of what our training and focus of study and knowledge basis is?
Well, yes and no.
How do you mean?
Well, what you are talking about is the original form of democracy that was formed by the ancient Greeks. That was called direct democracy, and it required that everybody be able to assemble on a regular basis and meet to discuss and debate the issues of that day.
And shouldn't that be how it's done today?
Well, it was a bit easier in the 5th century. There weren't nearly as many people in ancient Greece, and on top of that, only the men went to the meetings while the women and slaves stayed home to tend the house.
So, how does that type of democracy translate to what we live in today?
Well, we live in a representative democracy, which means that the people elect others, called representatives, to act on our behalfs.
I still think the other way is more effective.
It's not really practical for today's society since we have so many people in our nation, unless you have a clever way of trying to get 300 million people into one meeting place at the same time.
Well, I guess you're right about that.
And, I mean, it's not like direct democracy is completely absent from today's society. I mean, it can still be very beneficial in smaller settings like communities and school boards. And the beauty of American democracy is we can decide whether or not we want to be made part of that decision-making process. But at the same time, we can't complain if decisions are made that don't benefit us directly because we didn't take part in the process of the decision.
Okay, so that's fine and all, but how do we make sure that it's the people's voice that is heard in our representative government if we're not directly involved with the decision making?
Well, there are benchmarks that must exist for there to be a healthy representative democracy. The first of which is popular sovereignty, which must also have the other two benchmarks, political equality and political liberty, in order to exist.
Right.
Popular sovereignty basically means that the people are the ultimate source of government, and what the government does should be based on what the people want. Some of the conditions for popular sovereignty are the ideas of majority rule, high quality information being available at all times, and that elections are fair and free, among other things.
Alright, that's one, but what about the other two things you mentioned?
Right. One of them is political equality, which means that everyone, no matter their background, has an equal value when it comes to voting or political decision making. Basically, no one's vote counts more than anyone else's. The other is political liberty, which means that we are free to believe what we believe when it comes to politics and have every right to express that belief. Basically, the First Amendment to the Constitution.
And without those two, popular sovereignty can't exist.
Exactly.
Well, how do we make sure that the representatives we select are representing and fighting for what we want?
Well, that responsibility falls down to us. We have to take it upon ourselves to put in the research before we, vote for someone that's going to represent us. And especially in this day and age, there's such a plethora of source material out there that we can pull from to gain an idea about what someone's policy and beliefs are.
And what if they are elected and they go against what they said they would accomplish for the people?
Well, there are ways we can take them out of office if they aren't acting in the interest of the people. It is possible for elected officials to be impeached, even the president. And think about 10 years ago when Governor Gray Davis was voted out of office by a recall election by the people.
Oh, then. Guess that answers that question.
I guess it does.
Places. Thank you, Places.
Ah, great.